So any questions? Give your secret. All right, this is your turn now. So why are you not wearing any sweater or any warm clothing?
Before half an hour I was running. So
Pardon?
I was running.
This is the time when you must wear a sweater. So after exercise, when you're feeling hot,
yes, sir.
if you don't wear any clothes, suitable warm clothes, then you are most likely to fall in to catch cold.
So I was running towards my house.
So this is the right time for you to wear something.
I felt. So my question is that...
Dr. Sahib, Dr. Mujib, have you not told him this?
I didn't see him.
You have a false security because you are generating heat from within, and then you are caught unawares, and then the cold overtakes you.
Thank you.
Unawares.
Thank you very much, sir. So
Yes.
my question is that in Surah Al-Mu'minun, ayat 18, verse 18, it is said that we have fashioned 7 spiritual paths. 7 spiritual paths for the people.
So where is it?
In Surah Al-Mu'minun,
recite the verse from
verse 18,
the Holy Quran. क्यों जी क्या बात है? सातों रास्ते घूम गए हैं?
Difference in the pages, the list of pages.
No, read the number of verse.
I didn't find the surah. First I'm finding that.
So give it to someone. Please help him. Saki Sahib or someone. Please. Surah Mu'minun. 25th or 24th? 25th? Huh? 25th or 24th? Achha.
فَانْشَأْنَا لَكُمْ بِهِ جَنَّاتٍ مِّن نَخِيلٍ وَأَعْنَابٍ
وَأَنْشَأْنَا
فَانْشَأْنَا لَكُمْ بِهِ جَنَّاتٍ مِّن نَخِيلٍ وَأَعْنَابٍ لَكُمْ فِيهَا فَوَاكِهُ كَثِيرَةٌ وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ.
Yes. And
which
इससे पहले देखें वो बिस्मिल्लाह इन्होंने अकाउंट नहीं की होगी इससे पहले आयत देखें
وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً بِقَدْرٍ فَأَسْقَيْنَاهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَإِنَّا عَلَى ذَهَابٍ
بِهِ لَقَادِرُونَ.
Yes, sir. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعَ طَرَائِقَ وَمَا كُنَّا عَنِ الْخَلْقِ غَافِلِينَ. So this. What are the 7 paths, spiritual paths? The translation was about 7 paths.
I have mentioned the significance of the word 7.
Yes,
last night I didn't mention it. Were you not present?
no, sir. I came late.
So that I have already described. Listen to that tape, then you will understand the significance of the 7, and this will also apply to this verse. Yes,
Sir, in Surah Fatiha, it is said that Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, this right, straight path. So if anyone asks somebody where is the specific place, we can mention different paths, but we can say that this is straight path and this is something like maybe long or curved or this, but it will lead to that place. So I want to know in our faith, Islam is the right path, but one can also reach the place where Islam leads with the other, but maybe it will take longer time.
It's not just a simply, it is just not a geometrical statement or which you are conceiving. The word mustaqim contains many connotations. It is not just like the English word straight, which means just the shortest route between the 2 points. Mustaqim is the word derived from qama, yuqimu. Istiqama means somebody who remains upright despite the opposite attempts to dislodge him. If somebody remains upright despite various attempts to dislodge him from his position, that is the person who will be called mustaqim. This is why in another verse the Holy Quran tells us, Innal lazina qalu rabbuna Allahu thumma istaqamu. Those of the people who say God is our sustainer and He alone is our sustainer, summa istaqamu. It doesn't say summa qamu. Though then they remain steadfast on this. Despite various pressures from all sides, they remained steadfastly stuck to their claim. So, word mustaqim in Surah Fatiha is very poorly translated when we just translate it as a straight path. It is not only that. Much deeper and more important significance lies within, and this is the way to reach those hidden significances. To understand the construction in Arabic, then many new doors would be open to you for the understanding of this word. So Sirat-e-Mustaqim here in the following verse is explained in the same sense. Sirat-al-Mustaqim can be tread upon by every type of person, by the wrong ones as well as the good ones. But here, istiqama means those people who are the right ones. More than the road, the people who tread are the right people. This is why it is explained, Siratal lazina anamta alayhim. A right path, but by that we mean a path trodden by the right people. Allazina anamta alayhim. Not the path trodden by the wrong people. Ghairil maghzubi alayhim walad dhalin. So this is the sense of the right path. A path which has led people previously to the ultimate success. Yes, please.
Sir, the third question is that
next time when you ask permission for another question, look at the face of Mr. Abdul Rashid.
So he has previously allowed me.
He has already?
Namaz. Yes. And
also?
I don't know about it.
So look at him then.
Yes.
If you want to know what passes within his heart, look at the index of his face.
He's looking very happy.
Pardon?
He's not anxious. He's very happy.
No, very happy at my censure of you. Come on. One more question and then we'll turn to others.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, it is tradition or maybe yes tradition that the dogs must not be kept in houses. Though in those houses the angels do not descend.
Pardon?
Angels do not descend on the house, in the houses where the dogs are kept. Could you please explain this?
I have seen a house where dogs were kept and angels descended.
That's the. So it's a tradition. I don't know.
The Holy Quran says that you are permitted to train dogs for capturing, for game, for the purpose of game. So, if the Holy Quran permits you in one place, how could he also tell you that the angels will not come and this is the cost you have to pay for that. Obviously this doesn't mean that. It means if you keep dogs in a manner that they are a source of danger for everybody, they are not well trained, then gentlemen would not call on you. Because Malaika in the Holy Quran has also been applied to human beings, gentlemen, good people. So that is what it means. Angels are not afraid of dogs. I mean, they can't do them any harm. Only human angels are afraid of dogs.
Is there any black prophet in the Quran mentioned or in history?
Yes, Hazur Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions one. Ahad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Kana fil hinde nabiyun aswadul lawne. There was a prophet in India who was black in color. Krishan Kanhaiya is that black prophet. His name contains the meaning, the sense of very dark color, complexion, almost black complexion in fact.
Not from Africa.
Why not?
From Africa color.
Why not?
I mean, it seems a bit odd.
Pardon?
It seems a bit odd that...
No, it doesn't seem at all. If there were no prophets sent in Africa, that would be odd. Because the Holy Quran categorically states that there is no region of the earth where we have not sent the prophets. No people on earth where we have not sent the prophets. No age in which we have not sent the prophets. So after these categorical statements of the Holy Quran, what would be odd would be if there were no prophet sent to Africa. That would be in contradiction of the clear statements of the Holy Quran. You want to know the name? Eh?
Please, the thing is there's so many names.
How could I learn a name? I could only learn from the Holy Quran or from the tradition, and they are silent about it. They have just laid down the principle, because had they started mentioning all those prophets by name, the Holy Quran and the tradition, then the list would extend to 124,000 some. So that would be a very long list.
The other question, sir.
Yes, please.
Is there any woman prophet? Or can be a woman prophet?
Pardon?
Is there any woman prophet? Or can a woman be a prophet?
Prophetesses loosely, in loose terms, are known to have appeared in the sense that Allah spoke to them and they foretold some events, but they were not appointed as commissioned officers from Allah. In the Christian terminology, we come across many ladies who are told as being prophetesses. Also in other mythologies, which later on perhaps turned into mythologies, and previously there might have been some substance from which they erupted, they sprang out. Great oracle prophetesses, they are known in history, in every region. But they did not found a religion. They were not founders of religion. They just came as soothsayers, as those who predicted some warnings, gave some glad tidings. And such ladies are even found today. Among Ahmadis I know many ladies to whom Allah speaks, to whom Allah reveals things, and one of the most prominent ones among them is known to everybody, Hazrat Zulfullah Khan Sahib's mother. She was a very pious lady who received revelation from Allah, visions from Allah, dreams that came true. And one lady who was very prominently known in our family, was Mirza Rashid Ahmed Sahib, late Mirza Rashid Ahmed Sahib's mother. She was known as Phuphi-ji. Although she was the daughter of a very staunch and committed enemy of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, Mirza Imam Din. And he was condemned through and through. But Allah draws light from darkness, and she was an example of that. She accepted Ahmadiyya, and she was so pious that I have heard Hazrat Muslim Maud say about her, myself, when I was a child, that of all the ladies that I know, of one I can say positively that Allah speaks to her, and that is that lady. Her dreams came true, she saw visions very often, and also Allah spoke to her verbally. So that happens. If you call that prophetess in the loose term, that's all right, but not that according to Islamic terminology of the prophet. That is commissioned officer. Maybe in the loose terms, ulama ummati, there are also such ladies.
Is a woman inferior to man?
No. The office is too sturdy and too difficult and too onerous. The duties which are attributed to a prophet are so heavy that the ladies cannot perform them. They are not built for that. As I mentioned once before, there are beasts of burden of different quality and different capacity. You can't load every beast of burden equally, because they are made up for certain purposes. So if there is definitely a difference between the constitution of man and a woman, then of course the responsibilities would differ as well. You can't say there is no difference between the constitution, between the general behavior of the two. In the general framework of human beings, they do differ, don't they?
But spiritually, we should be the same, woman and man.
How?
Spiritually,
No, spiritually they are the same, but responsibilities are different. When you throw responsibilities, you can't expect something from a weaker sex. Weaker in the sense that they are built for a different purpose, and at times they would not be able to discharge their duties. And they would also be weak in many respects. For instance, you would never hear a man being raped by a woman. Why not? If they are equal in everything, because there is constitutional difference. So she can't defend herself in such situations. She can be forced, while men cannot be forced. So how could Allah make a prophet, commissioned prophet from among women, where their chastity could be violated by force? This is just one example. There's so many. I mean, difference is there. Very obvious constitutional difference is there, but we don't have to go into details of comparison. It is a pity upon them that they are not made prophets, not a reflection upon them. Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah.
This question is from your husband and other ladies. She would like to ask, could you please define taqwa?
That I have already done so many times, and still it will not be exhausted. Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam has written so much on this, that of all the Islamic scholars, I think if you combine all their explanations of taqwa on one side and collect Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam's disposition on this on the other, this would, I think, would be larger in number. He has so much spoken on taqwa and so much written about it. You better read the books.
Adum, I have two peculiar questions to ask. The first is that
Everybody now has started with tools. Eh?
but I would like to
You have
ask
left a good tradition behind, Mr. Rashid. Yes, please.
when Hazur was elected Khalifatul Masih, Hazur said in his first khutbah Jummah that इंसान को तो अपने जज्बात के ऊपर काबू नहीं होता, वो तो उसके बस की बात नहीं है, लेकिन जो भी उसके जज्बात हों उससे खलीफा को आगाह होना चाहिए. Second statement Your Holiness gave here was, I am a humble man, not a prophet. Question is, if somebody thinks in his own mind and has a firm faith upon it that you are indeed a prophet, would that be Islamic or non-Islamic?
Who is a prophet?
Your Holiness.
No, that is wrong, because that is a thing which is totally unfounded. Why? I'll explain to you. Because it is for Allah to appoint someone as prophet, and when Allah appoints someone as prophet, He tells him. He doesn't keep it a secret from him. So much so that out of humility, those who are told they are prophets, they try to explain it away in some other ways. But Allah persists and keep on telling them that no, they are prophets and they are prophets. So it's not the other way around, that they are not told and somebody else begins to believe, and that too without any foundation, without any knowledge from Allah. So it is wrong to do that. All that I can say is that if somebody thinks, he should rectify his thought, because if he is doing it innocently, that is pardonable, but he must rectify himself after knowing.
Thank you. The second question is, I would like to know that when Hazur left Qasr Khilafat, was you alone? Was there one with you, or two with you, or three with you? This information I require to translate some of the Holy Quran ayat.
The fact is that when we left the Qasr Khilafat, of my own personal family, we were four, including me, 5. Myself, my wife, and 3 daughters. Later on, when I left Karachi, we were 4 of the family. 3, my wife, 2 daughters, and myself. As far as the total number who left Karachi is concerned, we were 6 altogether. 2 of my companions, one was Brigadier Waki and one was Chaudhry Hamid Nusullah with us. But when we left Rabwa, there was quite a convoy. There was no secret about it in that sense, which has been generally, the stories which have been published by the papers are wrong. In fact, we left in quite some convoy. We had about 4 or 5 cars in a procession, but we did not want to give it undue publicity. Yet I was not hiding. I sat in the front seat and without any cover, without any curtain over it, and I also had my turban and my cap as well. This is a general habit. It was not just at that time that I acquired this. Whenever I journey, because the turban is rather heavy when I go out long distance, for instance, during my last tour of Europe, I always had a cap available so that I could wear the cap and put the turban aside. So this is exactly what I did. So the proof that it was not for the sake of hiding lies in the fact that when I left Karachi, that was a danger point, if at all there was a danger point, I wore that turban and walked out in my normal dress. I went to the officers concerned, presented my case, and went to the VIP room, which was generally provided to Khalifatul Masih as well. So all the press reports about that are totally false and without foundation. So that is the whole story. But don't try to force your interpretations upon the Holy Quran.
It seems somewhat to me that...
No, but if there is something, you better, to be on the safe side, write to me.
Yeah.
If there is any possibility, any substance in that, then I'll let you know. Otherwise, I will save you from erroneous calculations and erroneous inferences, right? Any other question, please? Bashir Yad Sahib, at last, the same 15 minutes alone, 50, that's all left to you. And this, you have not have your fill either, have you?
I love him. He requested me before. He said, give me ample time. And that's why I'll have a go tomorrow, sir.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
But still he has not been given ample time. 15 minutes is just, it's nothing.
It's not my fault.
Assalamu alaikum. So this question is just, I got the main question, but before I ask my question, there is a little point I want to clear. Regarding a poem, yesterday Azur mentioned that there is a new poem.
I didn't mention.
Somebody else mentioned.
Yes, right.
Hazur poem.
And I admitted, I didn't deny that.
And this is the question regarding a poem.
I see.
First,
okay.
Hazur had some times back indicated that a new poem of Hazur was being composed. If composed, could we have...
You have already heard it. I had it played back here, recorded poem, recorded version, recitation of that poem. Everybody heard it. That is everybody who was present. You didn't know?
I must be not be present in that. Because what I remember still, Hazur had recited 3 verses of a poem. Long time.
I know, but the point is, it was Mansoor Chaudhary who wanted me to have my poem recited here if I had said one. I said yes, one is in the making, and when it is composed then I'll let everybody know. So after it was composed, it was recorded in somebody's voice. I mean, so many people in fact recorded it. And one of the versions was played back here before everybody, wasn't it? Yes? That's reached everywhere except his house. Yes.
To my ignorance, I may not be present in those.
No, that's right. I mean, there's no harm at all.
But one is available.
It's available. It's available.
Now I come to my question, please.
Yes, please.
Would Hazur kindly explain any concept of system of taxes in Islam, like rates, custom duty, and other taxes levied under the present governments of the world?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. The fact is that the Holy Quran is not a book on taxation. It only gives you principles of what you should spend and how you should spend and the limitations of your spending. And those principles applied to various countries would elicit different answers, because the situation, economic situation of one country may be and is different from the other. And these taxation details are decided according to the economic situations prevalent in a country. They have always a direct bearing to the general economic situation of the country. So Islam just gives the principles, and under those principles, which should not be violated, the laws can be different, the rules can be different. And from age to age also, there are so many differences. For instance, the list of those things which can be imported and the taxation on each item varies from time to time. There are certain machines mentioned today, for instance video. Tomorrow there may be a 3-dimensional laser machine which would produce the same thing in 3 dimensions. So which would be mentioned in the list of tomorrow. So how could you expect Islam to give a detailed list of every country for every age, that custom should be levied to this extent there and to that extent there? It's not possible. But still you are not satisfied. You accept, of course, but
system of Islamic system. What is we see the modern world, and that's why this question arose. If we have to answer.
Islam speaks of the principles that this I have explained to you. It speaks of certain standards of justice which should be equally applied, and the well-being of the masses, of the people, should be kept in mind. It should not be anything out of personal requirement of a group of people to suit them. But whatever is in the general cause good, that should be adopted. Such principles, this is just one illustration. There are so many principles laid down in the Holy Quran on how you should govern your affairs. And that is all. Islam could not go into details because it's a religion for all times, for all the people of the world. The moment it went into detail, it would begin to clash. It would create a clash between one people and another and their respective requirements. All right. Is that all you waited for? Really? So Mr. Muhammad Abdul Rashid, you can come and occupy the floor. We thought you had quite a few questions available.
He was not satisfied yesterday either, sir. He said it was not fair. You gave me last 10 minutes yesterday and that was not enough for Azur to finish.
I think he has forgotten his papers. Have you? Last time you showed me in the pocket there were quite a thick pile of papers, eh?
Please go ahead.
Last letter. Now I give you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Azur, this question is from Surah Saf. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min azabin alim tu'minuna billahi wa rasulihi wa tujahiduna fi sabilillahi bi amwalikum wa anfusikum zalikum khairul lakum in kuntum ta'lamun. My question is this, sir. Tujahiduna fi sabilillahi bi amwalikum wa anfusikum. This anfusikum means tabligh. Would you say
as well?
Tabligh?
As well. Also tabligh.
Yeah, but sir, as Hazrat Nasir Maud has already said that the tabligh is the Jihad Akbar.
Where has he said tabligh is Jihad Akbar?
Well, this is what he refers, sir.
I have never read it. I don't know. Find out first.
In the modern times, sir, I was asking you the other day as well.
You are attributing a statement to Hazrat Masih Maud of which I am totally unaware.
Yes, sorry about that. Could you kindly explain what that means?
You can't wriggle out now.
Yeah.
You have to produce the exact statement tomorrow.
Yeah, I will, sir. Could you kindly explain?
Because maybe I am wrong, I don't know. Maybe there is such a statement, but I don't know.
All right, sir. About this tabligh, I was talking to somebody, Englishman, and he threw some good points in my favor.
I see.
Which I thought I request you as well, if you agree with these, who can start.
Did you agree?
Well, I have read his points, which was really. He said Western society is very ignorant about Islamic teaching.
That's right.
And we must do something. Yes. Second question he pointed out was. We believe what our ancestors believed.
That is what the
really and truly going.
That is exactly what the Holy Quran says. That whenever you approach them with light, with truth, they say, "Leave us alone. We believe in what our ancestors used to believe."
Yeah. This mockery must demoralize. This should disappear now, really, because everybody is on his own and his thinking is different.
This is what the Holy Quran has mentioned. The attitude of those who are on the wrong path. They say this is what our elders have been doing. But in other things, they don't follow their elders. So it's only an excuse, a lame excuse for that matter. And why don't they ride the same horses their elders did? Why don't they fight with the same weapons with their elders fought with? Everything else for their own personal betterment is acquired without any question. So in the matter of faith, must you follow your elders? I mean, this is a lame excuse. This is how the Holy Quran quotes it, as meaningless, hollow, lame excuse.
Third question, sir, he said that it's very difficult for us to spare money in the way of subscription you people want.
If somebody who doesn't believe, it's very difficult for him. Of course it is.
And another point which worries me
Why should
most,
somebody part with his well-earned money
he
when
said
he doesn't
wherever
believe in
there
the
is-
cause? Pardon?
wherever there is religion, there is poverty, and religion brings poverty in the country.
Where we find it the other way around. It is the lack of religion which has caused poverty in Islamic countries, not the religion. When they were religious people, they were the wealthiest people on earth. When you travel back into history, do you have an ascending path or a descending path? This is the most important point to be determined. As far as the religious graph goes, as you go back in history, you find an ascending path. The previous generation was more religious. The previous to them was still more religious. Until you reach Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you find the most highly religious society. Is that correct or wrong? So the religion, when it was acted in its best, attracted the wealth as well, created wealth out of nothingness. And the society which was found by Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam was extremely destitute before Islam was acquired by them, was accepted by them. And when Islam was accepted, they suddenly became very rich. And ultimately they became the richest in the world. Is that not a fact?
It's true.
So, how can you draw exactly the opposite conclusion? When religion was truly followed and was in practice, then wealth also followed the religious people, like a bondage girl. But when they abandoned their religion, then the wealth also left them. This is a general phenomenon. Except by way of trials, the Holy Quran also mentions that phenomenon. Sometimes the people, when they become irreligious, they are tried with wealth. Suddenly they find themselves in opulence. And then they do misdeeds and show that they were not worthy of wealth. That is a different phenomenon altogether. But this question is not valid. That has been proved.
Last point he made was, which I don't agree at all. He said your religion was practicable 1400 years ago, but at the moment you can see nobody is practicing. How can you teach
Why don't
me?
you tell him that you are
I told
practicing?
him about Rabba and Kabir.
No, about yourself.
About myself as well. He knows me, my example.
So,
but he
what
said
does he say?
that he was not really fully satisfied.
What a poor assessment he has made of you.
People do, sir, I don't mind.
I think it's totally wrong. You set a very good example of being a good Muslim, rather a simple Muslim for that matter, but clever inside.
What's the difference between simple and being clever? you just said that yesterday.
You have demonstrated
And I was
it.
thinking already today.
You have already demonstrated it. In the poetic terms, I can quote Ghalib, सादगी और पुरकारी, बेखुदी और होशियारी, हुस्न को तगाफुल में जुर्रत आजमा पाया. Have you followed it?
Being sada, I don't know that.
Okay. So let's change the subject to come to the serious question now. Huh?
Small question, sir. You see from the...
Small question are very,
this
very
is,
interesting, these small questions.
well, this is from Tafsir Kabir report. नबियों में अक्सरियत नबियों की गरीब लोगों में से थी. Could you kindly explain this?
What explanation do you want?
You see, it comes back to my point. Poor people accept the religion very quickly and they go to God quicker than rich people. Is it true, sir, or I don't know?
No, the point is most of the prophets were chosen from among the poor. Lest anybody like Freud, anybody like Karl Marx, or so-called philosophers of the world, should blame them to be the representatives of the bourgeois. So if you look at the life histories of the prophets, you come upon a very different picture. Most of the prophets hailed from the poor society, and while they were prophets, they did not amass wealth. In fact, they did exactly the opposite. So all the allegations by communist philosophy or other philosophers of the West that the prophets are agents of the bourgeois or the class are belied by this fact of history. So to that extent, this serves the purpose. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
No sound.
Hazur, on Friday you mentioned about this technique of studying to do away with exams and to...
Last night.
Was it last night?
Yes.
Oh. Anyway, I'm just wondering, is this philosophy being employed in Rabwa, Qadian at all? Of doing away with exams and increasing the load of books?
This is what I suggested, but they were rather timid. The people concerned with this institution, including Vakil-e-Ala Chaudhry Hamidullah Sahab, were rather timid about it. They thought perhaps it may backfire, may not work, may just flop. So they have not accepted this idea of doing away with the examinations. I told them this can happen, this would work. I know positively this could work. But the older system has so ridden their minds and their whole educational background that it's impossible for them to break the bondage. The fact is that if you suggest 100 or so books for each year of Jamia, that would keep the boys very busy. They don't have to give any examination, they have to understand the books if they have to, by writing down the points of difficult points and going to their patrons or their tutors or teachers for explanation. To that much, a teacher is a must, no doubt. And when they have read and finished the book, they could go and have the list ticked that in that book has been read by such and such person. So they could much widen their field of study, and because they would not be under any pressure and fear, they would learn much more and absorb the essence of the book much more. And within a matter of 3 or 4 years, you could have great scholars. But this method cannot be applied to every branch. For instance, learning of languages. In the broad sense it can be applied. You can't learn a language truly unless you have read very widely its literature pertaining to every branch of knowledge. Only then you can truly become a master of a language. But otherwise, to learn a language, this process would be far too slow. So for this, a different method has to be adopted. And also, for learning grammar, for instance, of a language, a different method has to be adopted. So one must not go too far in generalizations. I quoted it just as a general example. It could be useful in some fields if restrictedly used, would not be useful or applicable in some others. So if you free your mind from the old bondages and slavery of the past inheritances, then perhaps you could conceive of a much better and practicable and useful system than at present prevalent in the world. Personally, I go for that. all that I have learned is not from the colleges or the schools. By just loose study, everything which came my way, I started studying and enjoyed it. So that is my way of learning things. It may not be applicable to everyone. Any other question, or shall we call it a day? Yes, please. Nasiruddin? Salim, you have had your day, haven't you?
Yes, sir. So you are
For tonight. I asked others, of course. Yes, please.
Hazrat Masih Maud says, if somebody abuse you, call you name, you must not call him names because he has called you so. I said I can explain it better in Urdu if I may. I can explain it better in Urdu if I may with your permission.
Okay. But you can speak good English, why not in English? Because it is for the benefit of the English-speaking people that we are holding these sessions in English. Because these cassettes are distributed to the world everywhere. They even go to Japan. So those people who do not understand Urdu, it is particularly for their benefit. So it would be much better if a person could speak in English or even make do in English. He should stick to the English. If you find yourself in difficulty at some place, you can switch over to Urdu for that while.
Well, in translating Hazur's Tahrir in English is somewhat difficult for me.
I understand. So try first, tell us the gist in Urdu and then try to translate it.
Hazur फरमाते हैं कि लोग तुम्हें गालियाँ देते हैं, बुरा भला कहते हैं, और अगर तुम भी उनको बदले में गालियाँ दो और बुरा भला कहते हो, तो फिर तुम्हारे और उनमें क्या फर्क है? Then he goes on and says that मुझे अल्लाह ताला ने बताया है कि जो मुझे नहीं मानता वो मुसलमान नहीं है. Now what is the difference between them and us?
I understand. I don't follow this point. First of all, I instructed many a time before that whenever you quote from Hazrat Masih Maud al-Islam's books and you want to ask a question based on what he has written, it would be much better if you bring the book or at least have in writing the excerpt from that book. Because it's very important what wording has been used by Hazrat Masih Maud al-Islam. It makes a very important fundamental difference. His words are selective and they themselves explain themselves. So when you bring this writing of Hazrat Masih Maud al-Islam in his own words, then I'll be able to explain it.
Inshallah.